We are live.
Yay, it's Monday. Despite my son's best tries, we're actually doing a live stream today. And we get the bonus of having Guy, the Green Bard, jumping in with us. And
Hello.
Forgot to turn the volume down on the tablet. Anytime Guy jumps in, we're definitely blessed to have him with us. His channel is.
Hey, I'm actually getting a phone call and I have to jump off, so I'll be back in a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
See, you made him mad, Richard. But this is Jon 3. It is Monday. We're still able. My wife got off work early, so she's taking care of the little one. And Jon 3. This is going to be a good one. And if you've watched any of these videos, you know we start with the brains of the operation, which is Richard. And then I'll jump in with my stupid stuff every now and then. I apologize for the low light. My garage LED lights that I had in here for the lighting crapped out on me this morning. So I got to go buy another one. So take it away, Richard.
All right. So this is the 23rd chapter of Clash, Jon 3. The brother of kings meets Craster. A blowing rain lashed at Jon's face as he spurred his horse across the swollen stream. Beside him, Lord Commander Mormont gave the hood of his cloak a tug, muttering curses on the weather. His raven sat at his shoulder, feathers ruffled, as soaked and grumpy as the old bear himself. A gust of wind sent wet leaves flapping round them like a flock of dead birds. The haunted forest, Jon thought ruefully. The drowned forest, more like it. So this kind of reminds me of the ghost forest in Alaska. And in 1964, an earthquake lowered the forest below sea level temporarily, creating a forest too salty for vegetation to survive. It's called the ghost forest, but the drowned forest would be an appropriate name.
Yeah. And also, which he does it a couple of times in this chapter, the singular mind of Mormont and his ravens as Raven. It does it a couple of times. And I know that's the hint that there are messages through the old Raven to Mormont, helping him make decisions, that type of stuff. But
and he definitely seems to, the Raven definitely seems to be much more significant in its wording in this chapter than usual. Often you're like, is this really significant? No, this feels like it's significant in some of these. Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thorin Smallwood swore that Craster was a friend of the Watch, despite his unsavory reputation. The man's half mad, I won't deny it, he told the old bear. But you'd be the same if you'd spent your life in this cursed wood. Even so, he's never turned a ranger away from his fire, nor does he love Mance Rayder. He'll give us good counsel. So long as he gives us a hot meal and a chance to dry our clothes, I'll be happy. Tywin said Craster was a kinslayer, liar, raper, and craven, and hinted that he trafficked with slavers and demons. And worse, the old forester would add, clacking his wooden teeth. There's a cold smell to that one, there is. Tywin's nose never lies.
Yeah.
Right. And throughout this whole chapter, you've got Thorin Smallwood is like always the one that's on Craster's side. And all the rest of them are like, really? Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the seasoned Rangers definitely can sense the magical cold that is the White Walkers.
It's usually
we get it with Garen.
Nose.
Yeah, well, I mean, we get it with Garen and the prologue and everything. He knows there's something different about it. So I would take that guy's nose to the bank.
Right. It's pretty funny how his nose seems to always be right. Anyway.
Yeah.
Everyone he passed seemed to be weeping. So George puts a lot of these weeping and tears in the story, which probably hints at something, although I'm not entirely sure what. It could be the concept of sacrifice and loss. Right? He talks about the importance of sacrifice, and there's this implication that that someone will sacrifice their own child, right? And so it's part of the reason why people think that Stannis is going to burn Shireen.
Yeah.
Or had always thought that even before the TV show seemed to confirm it.
I do like the theory that it is going to be Melisandre glamored as Davos that does it. But I mean, that's neither nor there.
Maybe I don't know. I don't think so. I think there really is this important aspect of it being Stannis doing something
Yeah, that's
crazy,
true.
right? I mean,
It needs to be. Well, I mean, does it need to be the amount of sacrifice, or is it just the amount of blood that's in the person?
well, from a thematic point of view, it's the reason why people think it needs to be Stannis, basically,
Yeah.
and because he's supposed to be this echo of the Mad King doing all of the things the Mad King does, and so it's kind of makes sense that he kind of goes over the top at some point.
Yeah.
Craster's keep is just ahead. If the gods are good, he'll let us sleep by his fire. Sam looked dubious. Dolorous Ed says Craster's a terrible, terrible savage. He marries his daughters and obeys no laws but those he makes himself. And Dywin told Gren he's got black blood in his veins. His mother was a wildling woman who lay with a ranger. So he's a bastard. Suddenly he realized what he was about to say. A bastard, Jon said with a laugh. You can say it, Sam. I've heard the word before. He put the spurs to his short-footed little Garen. I need to hunt down Sir Auden. Be careful around Craster's women, as if Samwell Tarly needed warning on that score. Samwell Tarly needed the warning.
Yeah, he did.
Craster has black blood, not just from a black crow, but probably also from a black and red dragon.
Yep.
Lord Mormont's in the hall, he announced. He said for you to join him. Best leave the wolf outside. He looks hungry enough to eat one of Craster's children. Well, truth be told, I'm hungry enough to eat one of Craster's children, so long as he was served hot. Go on, I'll see to your horse. If it's warm and dry inside, don't tell me. I wasn't asked in. He flicked a glob of wet mud out from under a horseshoe. Does this mud look like shit to you? Could it be that this whole hill is made of Craster's shit? Jon smiled. Well, I hear he's been here a long time. You cheer me not. Go see the old bear. I think George is using he as a pronoun here, not just because of formal English tradition, but because eating his sons is what the others do.
Yeah. There's also the last couple paragraphs that you've read. It shows how funny Jon is.
Right.
I mean, he's not devoid of humor. He's not this just sullen bastard from Winterfell. He's a really funny guy.
And it might help that he was just laughing at the whole "I've heard the word before" thing too, right? And
yeah.
And the fact that he doesn't say "I'm a bastard" is also kind of an interesting choice by George.
Yeah, it was a funny thing too when he was riding back from actually telling all of them to keep your hands to yourself. Crash was up ahead. This is involving Ghost. He moved so silently, Jon could not have said just when he appeared. And I had always assumed, like at the bridge when he found him, that he could always sense Ghost. Because we see it later on in the book. But I don't know. I like that shirt. I don't know. I'm assuming now that it has to be built. Ghost always knows where Jon is and can sense Jon, but that two-way bond isn't built up enough yet.
Apparently, yeah. Although we'll get to the point eventually where he'll start, having smells increase when Ghost gets near and so forth.
Yeah.
Craster's sheepskin jerkin and cloak of sewn skins made a shabby contrast, but around one thick wrist was a heavy ring that had the glint of gold. He looked to be a powerful man, though well into the winter of his days now, his mane of hair gray going to white. A flat nose and a drooping mouth gave him a cruel look, and one of his ears was missing. So this is a wildling. Jon remembered old Nan's tales of the savage folk who drank blood from human skulls. Craster seemed to be drinking a thin yellow beer from a chipped stone cup. Perhaps he had not heard the stories. I've not seen Benjen Stark for 3 years, he was telling Mormont. And if truth be told, I never once missed him. So some think Craster is lying, but I think the idea is that a skilled hunter disgusted by Craster might choose to avoid his hospitality whenever possible.
Yeah, I'm assuming that if he didn't need to cover, he didn't go there.
Yeah, and we'll talk here in a little bit about why people think this is a lie and why that doesn't necessarily hold true.
Yeah.
He ought to have passed here last year, said Thorin Smallwood. A dog came sniffing around his leg. He kicked it and sent it off yipping. Dywin and Ed tell us Craster is terrible, while Thorin, who kicks dogs, tells us Craster is a friend. Who do you think we're supposed to believe? Garrett says they were chasing raiders. I told him, with the commander that green, best not catch him. Gary wasn't half bad for a crow. Had less ears than me, that one. The bite took him, same as mine, Craster laughed. Now I hear he got no head neither. The bite do that too? The ears he lost to frostbite, but the head he lost to ice.
Now, how did he hear about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Somebody, he's seen some rangers and he's asked them. He's clearly seen some rangers since then, which is interesting, right? Because since then, we think, so maybe he is lying, right? Because are we aware of anybody else that's been sent out besides, I don't know, there's a lot of rangers. They probably don't just all stay at Castle Black every night. So it's probably
but it does hint to your point that Benjen did stop there.
Well, he definitely did at some point. Like he clearly knows who Benjen Stark is, and right. I mean, he's clearly familiar with Benjen Stark, and that's part of why I don't necessarily say that he's lying.
Yeah, well, he could have heard from Benjen Stark that Garrett lost his head.
He could have, right? Some people think he's lying, and that he actually that he actually ate Benjen. I've seen that theory.
Now, I have not heard that theory. I'm usually pretty. I mean, I like new theories. But I don't know if I like that one.
Yeah, I don't.
Was it Benjen's skull that was on the post?
I don't know. It's mostly I think the idea is I think at one point he might say something about blood sausages and pork and stuff. And he obviously does have a lot of pigs around still, right?
Yeah.
So he's not done with the pigs. He's got lots of pigs. So anytime people serve pork, people start to wonder. Anyway, tell him, wife. Tell the Lord Crow how well content we are. The woman licked at thin lips. This is our place. Craster keeps us safe. Better to die free than live a slave. Slave, muttered the raven. I guess it's all in where you're standing, but the raven seems to realize the irony of this statement.
Yes.
Better to die free than live a slave. Yeah, she sure seems like she's living like a slave.
As Craster smacks her on the leg, telling her to get him more beer.
Yeah. Every village we have passed has been abandoned. Yours are the first living faces we've seen since we left the wall. The people are gone. Whether dead, fled, or taken, I could not say. The animals as well. Nothing is left. And earlier we found the bodies of 2 of Ben Stark's rangers, only a few leagues from the wall. They were pale and cold, with black hands and black feet and wounds that did not bleed. Yet when we took them back to Castle Black, they rose in the night and killed. One slew to Sir Jeremy Riker, and the other came for me, which tells me that they remembered some of what they knew when they lived, but there was no human mercy left in them. The woman's mouth hung open, a wet pink cave, but Craster only gave a snort. We've had no such troubles here, and I'll thank you not to tell such evil tales under my roof. I'm a godly man, and the gods keep me safe. If whites come walking, I'll know how to send them back to their graves. Craster doesn't want the truth like most cult leaders.
Yeah. The girl's reaction is odd.
Yeah, she's shocked by this, which given that Gilly is like completely aware of the shiny blue eyes like stars, it's kind of weird that she's that, right? Because this implies that he's telling the truth, but then Gilly will imply that he's lying later. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it sure seems like an honest reaction that surprises them.
Well, I mean, the age of the girl and what she's seen up till then, probably, I don't know.
It's definitely a little contradictory, but George does like his ambiguousness.
Yeah, it's true.
No trouble from the dead, Jamin Backwell said, but what of the living, my lord? What of your king? King, cried Mormont's raven. King, king, king. That Mance Raider? Craster spit into the fire. King beyond the wall. What do free folk want with kings? He turned to squint on Mormont. There's much I could tell you of Raider and his doings if I had a mind. He sounds reluctant, but he does have a mind.
Yeah.
As we'll see later in this chapter. And I guess Thorin was right about one thing, right? He actually does tell them what's going on with Mance.
Yeah.
One more thing. Any man lays a hand on my wives, he loses the hand. Your rule, said Thorin Smallwood, and Lord Mormont nodded stiffly, though he looked none too pleased.
Because Thorin is doing too much talking.
Well, and Thorin is happy to oblige Craster all the time, right? He seems to, yeah. You're right. Yeah. You're right. It could be because he stepped in and said, "Oh yeah, of course." Before Mormont.
Well, isn't Thorin the one that Thorin wanted to do the leading the ranging and Mormont stay at Castle Black, right?
I can't remember. Maybe.
I know one wants to do it and Mormont stay at Castle Black. I can't remember which one it is.
It might be. I don't remember. Who's this one now? Craster said before Jon could go. He has the look of a Stark. So Jon doesn't just have the long face of a York. Stark. He also has a wolf sword on his back sticking up. You wouldn't need a recent sighting of Benjen to realize that Jon is a Stark. He's clearly familiar with Benjen. He knew Benjen, right? He hasn't seen him in 3 years, but he knows Benjen. He sees this long-faced guy with a wolf sword. I mean, it's a hand and a half sword sticking up his back. I mean, it's with a fancy wolf. Like, how many fancy wolves are there associated with? Anyway, it's not. People are like, oh, this proves that he's lying. I'm like, does it? I don't think so. Give the wildling an axe. Why not? He pointed out Mormont's weapon, a short-hafted battle axe with gold scrollwork inlaid on the black steel blade. Ooh, black blade, interesting. He'll give it back, I vow. Buried in the old bear's skull, like as not. Why not give him all our axes and our swords as well? I mislike the way they clank and rattle as we ride. We'd travel faster without them, straight to hell's door. Does it rain in hell, I wonder? Perhaps Craster would like a nice hat instead. Jon smiled. He wants an axe, and wine as well. See, the old bear's clever. If we get the wildling well and truly drunk, perhaps he'll only cut off an ear when he tries to slay us with that axe. I have 2 ears, but only 1 head. Smallwood says Craster is a friend to the watch. Do you know the difference between a wildling who's a friend of the watch and one who's not? Asked the dour squire. Our enemies leave our bodies for the crows and the wolves. Our friends bury us in secret graves. I wonder how long that bear has been nailed up on that gate, and what Craster had there before he became Halloween. Ed looked at the axe doubtfully, the rain running down his long face. Is it dry in there? Drier than out here. If I lurk about after, not too close to the fire, belike they'll take no note of me till morn. The ones under his roof will be the first he murders, but at least we'll be dry. Jon had to laugh. Craster's 1 man, worth 200. I doubt he'll murder anyone. You cheer me, said Ed, sounding utterly morose. And besides, there's much to be said for a good sharp axe. I'd hate to be murdered with a maul. I saw a man hit in the brow with a maul once. Scarce split the skin at all, but his head turned mushy and swelled up big as a gourd, only purpley red. A comely man, but he died ugly. It's good that we're not giving the mauls. Ed walked away, shaking his head, his sodden black cloak shedding the rain behind him. Gotta love Ed.
Yeah.
Also, Smallwood is still terrible.
Yes. That makes you think, how often did Smallwood stay with Craster when he was ranging?
Yeah.
How buddy.
Yeah, it does seem like he's really his buddy.
Yeah.
I was going to breed them rabbits. There's no sheep left. The watch will make good for them. Jon had to acquaint his own, or he would have offered it to her. He was not sure what good a few coppers or even a silver piece would do her beyond the wall. I'll speak to Lord Mormont on the morrow. She wiped her hands on her skirt. My lord, I'm no lord. But others had come crowding round, drawn by the woman's scream and the crash of the rabbit hutch. Don't you believe him, girl, called out Lark the sisterman, a ranger mean as a cur. That's Lord Snow himself, bastard of Winterfell and brother to kings, mocked Chet, who'd left his hounds to see what the commotion was about. Brother to kings, plural. Nice little clue there, George. He does that. We were talking before the stream started. He does that a lot, right? Where he picks these words that kind of sound like they roll off the tongue and it would make sense, but if you look at them carefully, they literally only match the story if certain other things are true, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, he does that with Barristan and Dany, where Barristan basically says that Rhaegar is Dany's father, but does so in such a way that you don't notice it, right? It's tell me, surely there's some good to be said of there's some good to be said of my father, surely, or something along those lines, right? And he goes, him and those who came before him, Rhaegar most of all. Like, wait, Rhaegar comes before her father? What?
Yeah, I've always been interested in that tinfoil. You know, my resignation to Jon and his parentage, but Danny's still interestingly, you know, not completely defined, right? We
right,
know
right,
we know she's got the
there's so
amazing
many
bloodline,
clues.
but yeah.
Anybody who's seen Star Wars should have a few red flags going off with her dream with the polished black visor. Well, technically, anybody who's seen Empire Strikes Back should have. Anyway.
There you go.
Chet blamed Jon for the loss of his comfortable position with Maester Aemon, and not without justice. If he had not gone to Aemon about Sam Tarly, Chet would still be tending an old blind man instead of a pack of ill-tempered hunting hounds. Well, sure, but he's a murderer and a rapist, and life isn't fair.
Yeah, you got to feel sorry for old Chet.
He's afraid of you, Chet. On the sisters, we have a name for them like him. I know all the names. Save your breath. He walked away, goes to the side. Jon is actually learning. Others had raised tents or made rude shelters by stretching their cloaks over low branches. Giant had crammed himself inside the hollow of a dead oak. How do you like my castle, Lord Snow? So we do know that there's been a handful of Greenseers that were giants, right? There's at one point when Bran is looking at all the bones of the old Greenseers, he mentions that there's something like half a dozen humans and a handful of giants.
Well, and so you got to think back to Norse mythology too, right? What's the name of their world tree? I forget off the top of my head. Yggdrasil, yeah, and the giants were obviously a huge part of all those stories, right? And so he's putting a giant literally in an Erd tree, right, or in a world tree, right? Just little stuff like that. And then now I just want to mention, guys, I put out a new video recently about Elden Ring and how George wrote, a big part of the backstory there, and there are giants, and actually that's a big part of the whole end game plot is to go into the land of the giants in order to burn down the Erd tree, which in this case is standing in for Yggdrasil, right? So that's actually part of the whole thing is that something alien is inside of this tree and controlling the whole world. You got to destroy it, and so that I mean. If that doesn't inform on A Song of Ice and Fire, I don't know what does.
George telling on himself.
He's telling on himself big time.
And even if you believe that the unambiguous only correct answer of Jon's mother is Lyanna, which I certainly don't. I think George believes that there are multiple correct answers to things. But even if you do, it doesn't rule out a whole lot of things, right? I mean, certainly there could be. It could be that the triplet Targaryens you sub out, Aegon and sub in Jon, for example, and the trueborn nature of, or the lack of trueborn nature of the York/Starks could still hold, right? I was kind of laughing at a Preston live stream a few weeks ago when he mentioned that there really ought to be some secret that Ned has that should really make us totally reevaluate him. That's the way George writes all his stories. And I'm like, well, really? The guy named after history's most famous bigamist, there might be some secret about him. Who looks like history's most famous bigamist. Anyway, the point is.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, to me, the most likely one is that Robb is not actually Eddard's, right? Out of all of those.
Well, yeah, we've definitely taled about that one, right?
No, I'm not saying I believe that absolutely is the case. I'm saying George leaves it open for it, right?
Right. No, that one is definitely very ambiguous and seems to have some of the same language clues that Dany has about her parentage. They'll sometimes use like Ned's name as like Lord Eddard or like formally when it would make more sense to say your father, his father, that kind of thing. And you look at it and it's like every time that the name comes in with regard to being Rob's father, it's used in such a way that the use of the name is replacing a more natural his father kind of term. So that, right, and that's literally every time with Dany, right? There's 5 mentions of Ares and 2 of Rhaella in Dany's chapters, and they're always like that. They're like times when you would have thought that the person would be more likely to say, her father, your father, and then chose to say King Ares, they're King Ares II, and they formalize it in such a way that it kind of distances the relationship.
Yeah. So that's kind of similar to that other essay of mine that I put out on Twitter just recently. The whole
right, the consistent use of
little Dornish
little
princess thing. George does that with his language all the time, but sometimes subtly, and every once in a while, I'm sure he just is doing it naturally and doesn't realize he's doing something. So you got to watch out for that, obviously. But
right.
Most of the time, he's very careful about how he does that type of language, right?
Right.
Well, he's a rope-a-dope kind of writer. He will mention something 12 times a certain way, and then there's a couple that are the exception to the rule that just kind of throw the whole rule.
And I think he goes back and does editing, but every once in a while he misses one too, right?
Yeah, that could be. That's definitely
He
possible.
also has this trick where he'll say something 3 times, and then the 4th time, we as the reader automatically assume that it's the exact same as the first 3 times that he said it, or the other 3 times that he said it.
Oh, you think there's times where he deliberately changes a pattern to
exactly,
to
yeah.
indicate
He does it on purpose.
There.
He does it to hide. He does it to hide clues or hide evidence, and I could be completely wrong on it, but if I'm not mistaken, it is what is it, the bed of blood, bloody bed, and then automatically everybody assumes that is a birthing bed, and then one of the 4 times that is mentioned, I think it's 4, is referring to Lyanna and her bed of blood. And I was sitting there trying to play around with because he says Dany was born like 9 months after Jon, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out how Dany could be born a month after. I mean,
so the thing is, everybody who would have told her has motivation to lie about that. So her age isn't necessarily what she thinks it is, just like Rob's age isn't necessarily what she thinks it is.
No, but I'm just going off of what George said. And I'm like, well, what if Lyanna's, and I got yelled at on Twitter, so I quit putting theories out on Twitter. But how could Lyanna's bed of blood not have been a birthing bed? What else could it have been? And I was thinking bloodletting, and then Austin Flowers, which is someone I talked to on Twitter. I think he's in the medical field. He was like, yeah, bloodletting. That's how George Washington died. They were bloodletting him and got let out too much blood. So I'm like, okay, a bloody bed does not necessarily mean a birthing bed. Just because babies were born don't mean that they were born right then. Don't mean that they were born there. I mean,
I think they'll wind up being born there personally, but I understand why
around with it. I mean,
I keep saying I understand why you like this that because you're trying to make all of it fit, right? And
well, some of it,
all the parallels. You're trying to make the parallels with Bale the Bard and the hints that the blue roses are there, and right. You're trying to make all that fit, and it doesn't if it's a birthing bed at the Tower of Joy, and I get that. I just
well, if the babies were born,
I still think there's symbolic reasons why he wants that to be taking place in Dorne. So the
other reason I was trying to think of it was we got Hull and Half Maester that everybody says is the Maester from Winterfell, and I'm like, well, how does he get to the Tower of Joy or Dorne? And was the same as Kat. She traveled after having a baby with her Maester. So
everybody agrees that he left Winterfell, though. I mean, there's no mystery there. Nobody thinks that he stayed in Winterfell. And
right. But how did he get to the point to where he could be with Aegon?
Have I told you guys my tinfoil about? I think Dany actually was born on Dragonstone, but or could have been born on Dragonstone, and here's how. So we know what happens timeline wise. So Ned, Ned goes to King's Landing about 2 weeks after we're going to say that that Dany was conceived, if she was conceived of Aerys, right? So they arrive about 2 weeks after that, and then he goes to Storm's End, lifts the siege, then he goes immediately to the Tower of Joy. How long does that take? 1 to 2 months, right? So if that were to happen, Jon's born, let's say 2 weeks before, or within 2 weeks of Ned showing up there, right? So then that's the 9 months, right? It's 2 months. It's really 7 months, but let's give George a break here, right? So if that were to happen, that's how it happens. But my tinfoil of the whole deal is, what the hell was Ned doing in Starfall for so long? What happened afterwards? I think you've all heard that I think that all 3 of the Kingsguard survived. Well, I think Ned took them all incognito to Starfall, and then shipped 2 of them up to the Wall and shipped 1 of them over to Essos. The ones to the Wall were Corrin and Mance, right? Arthur and Geralt, right? And the one to Essos, who presumably Ned gave him a choice: the Wall or exile, right? And so that was Kettle Black, right? Oswell
went,
right?
Yeah.
So to me, the 4 loyal men could have been Oswell Went and 3 of his nephews.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And so he met them, took a ship, picked them up, and then they were the ones that rescued Viserys and whoever. If I don't know if there are theories about Dany being just a dragon seed,
sure.
right?
Preston
like
argued that.
So that could happen. So the reason I like it, though, is at that point, if they go back to Dorne, so they would go across the Braavosi coastline, and then Viserys would go to Braavos, and Dany could either go down to Dorne, or I guess Tyrosh is the other one because of the accent, right? Either way, it kind of mirrors Myrcella's trip, right? So Myrcella goes across, and then she goes down to Dorne, right? But she goes to the Braavosi coastline first. So I think.
And you think that there are? We've had this conversation before. You seem to think that there's 3 Myrcellas, because we know there's 2 Myrcellas in Dorne, right? We know specifically that the one with the one with red dots, which may or may not be Myrcella, and then the one that had her ear cut off, which may or may not be Myrcella, right? And then you've argued that there could even be a 3rd one that the real one might not be either of those 2. That those might both be doubles, right?
Yeah, it's possible the real one actually went to Braavos, because that would mean they split, just like Dany and Viserys would have been split in this scenario, right? And quite frankly, we know that from Maester Luwin, the smart man that he is, you split your heirs, right?
Right. And that's the whole argument of triple coherence that I make, is that it should be a parallel, right? And the idea that maybe the Dane siblings are sort of a parallel with the Reed siblings, or sort of the house of old god female equality kind of
But
anyway.
then I would assume that if you go back, fast forward 5 years, that's when the Aegon plot starts. That's when the Kettle Blacks become Kettle Blacks, and they join the Golden Company, I assume, or one of the other sellsword companies. That's when Jon Con is pulled in, right? Everything changes. Dany, the house with the red door is gone. All that's related somehow. I can't figure out how.
Right. And people have talked. I think is it Preston or is it Greenhand that's talked about how that specific date of when that seems to have happened seems to be
it's all at the same time, right?
I think it's Preston. I think Preston is trying to go through
I mean, they all talk about it to some degree, but what it comes down to is that would be when Septa Lemore shows up too. The whole Aegon plot is put together.
We haven't told you our new tinfoil on this.
So we
have new tinfoil on this.
Yeah. So the slow-eyed maid, of course, is a Shara, right? That's the whole name of that boat and all that, right? And then they're on, of course.
The shy maid is a reference to the maid with that purple eyes.
We're supposed to think about it, right? The shy maid and the slow-eyed maid are just.
But
Anyway.
I have a new theory. I have a new theory on this.
Either way, Ashara Dane does go with Howland Reed as Diana Gianna Reed for 4 or 5 years or so, and at that time she gets wind of Aegon being real, right? And then she jumps ship because she's still in love with Rhaegar, really.
So I don't actually think that she's. Yeah, I don't actually think that it works for her to be for the Septa to be Ashara. I think we actually are getting accurate ages from Tyrion, right? I think he's specifically tying our two Targaryens together, saying that they're 15, 16 year enough. So he's tying them together. He's tying their ages together, and he specifically tells us that Septa Lemore is well past 40. That's what he says, right?
Well, past 40. I don't think he said well past it.
Maybe he doesn't say well past, but he says north of 40 or over 40, something like that, right? And anyway, so my new tinfoil says she has to be somebody that would be impressed with, right? And I've been struggling with this. I've been like, well, how can that be? Like the only one thing that makes sense is Ashara Dane or Wyla, and neither one of those actually fit, because especially, Wyla, we're pretty sure probably went to Winterfell for a while and was definitely back in Dorne, because our second Ned Dane knows who she is and believes that that she was his nursemaid and so forth, right? So that doesn't really work. So then I got thinking, well, I used to think because of some of the mother type imagery around Quaithe, that Quaithe might be Rhaella, right? Because I don't think there's any indication that Rhaella was actually pregnant. In fact, there's pretty good evidence in the Song of Ice and Fire, or in the World of Ice and Fire, that she couldn't possibly be Dany's mother, right? Because based upon the fact that it seems like she was no longer capable of producing a healthy child quite a bit before that, right? And well, we see people dye their hair, right? We see Sansa dye her hair. We see Aegon dyeing his hair. We see the people on the Shy Maid dyeing their hair. I'm like, well, wait a minute. What if she's dyeing her hair too, right? She could in fact have silver hair and be dyeing her hair, and she could be Rhaella. That would be somebody that would be the right age that we would be like, wow, And I'm like, anyway, so that's my new tinfoil based on almost nothing other than the fact that people there seem to dye their hair, and and I feel like it should be somebody over 40 that would wow us.
Yeah. The only question I have is what would her motivation be for for not supporting Viserys, right? That's the only issue. Unless
why would she? That's a good question. Why would she choose specifically Aegon over Viserys? That's a good question.
The son of her firstborn. It's a good question.
I mean, she does potentially believe that he's going to be king and that should be king. That's maybe, but yeah, it still seems like she would do a better job of looking after Viserys. Sure, around. That's a reasonable objection.
But yeah, I mean, obviously you're right. Aegon, if the true heir, would be the true heir. So I can see her doing that. But I guess splitting your heirs is one thing. Splitting your mother from your heirs doesn't make doesn't ring as important or as the way, right?
Yeah.
But no, I like that. That's one I hadn't thought of, and actually I kind of like it.
I mean, it's just like, okay, well, who's over 40 that would I'd actually be like, whoa, mind blown. And then you look at the fact that Bonifer Hasty has turned completely to the faith, right? And he's arguably sort of her echo, and so her
that he's going to be one of the first ones that becomes a he's here in Harl right now, and he's going to be one of the first ones that turns to Aegon's cause, right? So right. Even if you're wrong about that, the Bonifer Hasty connection is definitely real,
Right. So anyway, that's my new tinfoil, trying to come up with somebody that would like wow us and still be over 40 that could be there.
Yeah, anyway. I mean, if Tyrion's off by 5 years though, and she's 37, it's not that far off. So I still feel like Lemore is the right answer. And this whole, oh, you can't see her eyes, that's just people being naysayers, because yeah, it would be giving.
Well, I would argue if that's your argument, then Quaithe is the way to go, right? Because that fits the whole Shadrick logic would be that so Quaithe's eyes, her eyes wet and shiny, should in theory be the exact same color as Dany's eyes, whose eyes are exactly the same color as the Shardane's, right?
I like the idea of Quaithe being Shira Sea-Star, actually.
I mean, that still gives you the same unusual purple eyes, and right. And so anyway, the point is, Quaithe definitely has unusual eyes. We're actually told that she does, and we're told that by somebody whose eye color is exactly the same as the Shardane's. Mm-hmm. So anyway, where were we?
Yeah, we're off.
Well, actually, part of why I wanted to talk about this, I was trying to say, that I do believe that he's that even if he went with R plus L equals J, that he would still go with the York identity crisis. And so inside the hollow of a dead oak, well, George often uses ash and oak as sort of his go-to replacements for weirwood. And people are like, well, that's just because blah, blah, blah. Well, or they'll say, well, clearly ash is because of Yggdrasil. And I'm like, well, there's a goddess whose first name is Ash and whose last name is Oak. That would make a lot of sense, right, for him to be referencing and be part of why he's doing that. So Asherah as the Dione. Dione is actually a translation of a lot, and a lot means oak tree, the god. So anyway, the old bear wants you to map for him. Craster says he'll find Mance Rayder for us. Oh, Sam did not look anxious to meet Craster, even if it meant a warm fire. Smart guy, that Sam. I guess Sammy agrees. The rabbit had been a scrawny thing, but as it cooked, it smelled like a king's feast. The king of the north.
There you
go. I wonder if he's able to hold the place.
Blood symbolism in this chapter.
Yeah, there's multiple kings. Jon is king symbolism, and as I've said, that doesn't necessarily make him a Targaryen. He's definitely foreshadowed to be king of the north. I wonder if he's able to hold the place. His defenses were nothing to speak of, only a muddy dike. So the Order of Greenhand has wondered why Mance didn't kill him. They had a whole little mini episode they did where they're just like, why doesn't Mance just kill this guy? Maybe they're a little bit worried about how that might accelerate the others' plans or something.
If Mance is his Kingsguard, I mean that's an answer in and of itself, right?
Oh, you're right, because he has his Targaryen blood, and so he might be reluctant.
Right. So that would be why those two were sent north, because they knew that Jon would be sent north if Jon is R plus L equals J, right? So that's to me the supporting evidence for the Kingsguard wanting to be in the north, and also Rhaegar actually being having seen the prophecies about the long night coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're all on the same page as to Arthur at a minimum.
Yeah.
He woke to the sight of his own breath misting in the cold morning air. When he moved, his bones ached. Ghost was gone. The fire burnt out. Jon reached to pull aside the cloak he hung over the rock and found it stiff and frozen. He crept beneath it and stood up in a forest turned to crystal. The pale pink light of dawn sparkled on branch and leaf and stone. Every blade of grass was carved from emerald. Every drip of water turned to diamond. Flowers and mushrooms alike wore coats of glass. Even the mud puddles had a bright brown sheen. Through the shimmering greenery, the black tents of his brothers were encased in a fine glaze of ice. So there is magic beyond the wall after all, he found himself thinking of his sisters, perhaps because he dreamed of them last night. Sansa would call this an enchantment, and tears would fill her eyes at the wonder of it, but Arya would run out laughing and shouting, wanting to touch it all. Always nice to see the Starks thinking of each other.
Yes.
So the pale, what did you say? The pale pink light of dawn?
Yeah.
Right. So of course when I heard that one, and there's there in one of Jon's later chapters where he actually is looking at the stars, it's late in the night or something. Of course, he's talking about the sword of the morning. And I literally, rather than seeing him saying this, the sword of morning lay low on the horizon or something, I literally imagined dawn sitting on somebody on a mantle, right? Rather than the stars. George was that direct about it. And I think the same thing here. He's suggesting that sword is present too. And again, another reason to think that our one of our favorite Dornish houses is here in the presence north of the wall, right?
Sure. Is it true, my lord? Are you brother to a king? A half-brother, he admitted. I'm Ned Stark's bastard. My brother Robb is the king of the north. Why are you here? They say the king gives justice and protects the weak. She started to climb off the rock awkwardly, but the ice had made it slippery and her foot went out from under her. Jon caught her before she could fall and helped her safely down. Just take me with you when you go. That's all I ask. All she asks, he thought, as if that were nothing. I'll be your wife if you like. My father, he's got 19 now. One less won't hurt him none. Black brothers are sworn never to take wives. Don't you know that? And we're guests in your father's hall besides. Not you, she said. I watched. You never ate at his board, nor slept by his fire. He never gave you guest right, so you're not bound to him. It's for the baby I have to go. I don't even know your name. Gilly, he called me, for the gillyflower. That's pretty. He remembered Sansa telling him once that he should say that whenever a lady told him her name. He could not help the girl, but perhaps the courtesy would please her. Is it Craster who frightens you, Gilly? For the baby, not for me. If it's a girl, that's not so bad. She'll grow up a few years and he'll marry her. But Nella says that it's to be a boy, and she's had 6 and knows these things. He gives the boys to the gods. Come the white cold, he does, and of late it comes more often. That's why he started giving them sheep, even though he has a taste for mutton. Only now the sheep's gone too. Next it will be dogs, till she lowered her eyes and stroked her belly. What gods? Jon was remembering that they'd seen no boys in Craster's keep, nor men either, save Craster himself. The cold gods, she said, the ones in the night, the white shadows. And suddenly Jon was back in the Lord Commander's tower again. A severed hand was climbing his calf, and when he pried it off with the point of his longsword, it lay writhing, fingers opening and closing. The dead man rose to his feet, blue eyes shining in that gashed and swollen face. Ropes of torn flesh hung from the great wounds in his belly, yet there was no blood. What color are their eyes? He asked her. Blue, as bright as blue stars, and as cold. She has seen them, he thought. Craster lied. So, I mean, the biggest question that comes out of all this is, why do the others accept sheep?
Blood.
Well, yeah. I mean, they have to ride something. It's interesting. You're right. I made a meme about that one time. Actually. It's like, what the fuck is this guy giving me? Sorry, I should not have said. I don't know if you guys.
It's okay.
No, it's not like we're going to monetize. Go on.
Yeah. You can just imagine this puzzled look on this other as he's walking away. What the hell am I going to do? But honestly, though, to me, what that means is the mutineers. As soon as that happens, it's not going to last long. The party's over real quick, right? Because as soon as those oh
yeah, because they're not going to know the sacrifice things.
Any gift to the gods stops, right? It's over for those guys, right? So you know that's why Brandon finding them in the woods is because they're running for their lives, right?
Right. Yeah. Preston has claimed, well, some of them could still be there. I'm like, I don't know. I think maybe the ones that survived the attack.
Well, I mean,
they got blue eyes if they are there still.
Yeah. Well, if the sheep are for a blood sacrifice, whatever they're doing out there to whatever, chances are the sheep blood doesn't last long enough, or it doesn't do a good enough sacrifice. So that's why they keep coming back for more and more sheep, quicker and quicker than what it would take to have a baby boy. And I would assume that the sacrifice of the baby boy, whatever they're doing with that blood, lasts a whole lot longer than what a sheep would.
And we talked during the weeping section earlier about how it seems that it's perhaps all the tears and weeping is about the concept of sacrifice and how it means more. If it's something means more to you, and so giving your own son means a lot more than some sheep, right?
Yeah, well, the love of mutton would mean that it would be a sacrifice, but it's a small sacrifice versus your own blood.
Right.
Damn her, he thought resentfully, and damn Sam twice for sending her to me. What do you think I could do for her? We're here to fight wildlings, not save them. Based on later arguments from Jon, perhaps the opposite is true. The free folk are just men and should be guarded.
Right. So that's Jon's growth, right? You know, that's giving him somewhere to grow from, right?
Right.
Yep.
You're blind as Maester Aemon. You never even saw that bear. What bear? Was there a bear? There's always a bear, declared Dolorous Ed in his usual tone of gloomy resignation. One killed my brother when I was young. Afterward, it wore his teeth around its neck on a leather thong. And they were good teeth, too, better than mine. I've had nothing but trouble with my teeth. Did Sam sleep in the hall last night? Jon asked him. I'd not call it sleeping. The ground was hard, the rushes ill-smelling, and my brother snore frightfully. Speak of bears if you will. None ever growled so fierce as Brown Bernard. I was warm, though. Some dogs crawled atop me during the night. My cloak was almost dry when one of them pissed in it. Or perhaps it was Brown Bernard. Have you noticed that the rain stopped the instant I had a roof above me? It will start again now that I'm back out. Gods and dogs alike delight to piss on me.
Oh, man.
You always have to include Ed.
Yeah.
Lord Mormont's raven was the first to spy a mentor. 3 lazy flaps of its great black wings, and it perched atop Longclaw's hilt. Corn? It nipped at a strand of Jon's hair. Ignore that wretched beggar bird, Jon. It's just had half my bacon. The raven knows. I will not eat Craster's food, he decided suddenly. I broke my fast with the men, my lord. Jon shooed the raven off Longclaw. The bird hopped back to Mormont's shoulder where it promptly shat. You might have done that on snow instead of saving it for me, the old bear grumbled. The raven quirked. Definitely seems like there might be some hidden fingers going on here, especially with the deciding suddenly like that.
Yeah. Well, the raven did not want to shit on Jon.
Well, there's that too, but I was more referring to the fact that Jon suddenly realizes that he wants to maintain this idea that he's not beholden to Craster. I know, said Sam guiltily, but she was afraid. I know what it is to be afraid. I told her, he swallowed. What? That we take her with us? Jon walked away as confused as he was angry. Sam's heart was as big as the rest of him, but for all his reading, he could be as thick as bread at times. It was impossible and dishonorable besides. So why do I feel so ashamed? He was ashamed not to smash the unjust wheel. My lord, Jon said quietly as the wood closed in around them once more, Craster has no sheep, nor any sons. Mormont made no answer. At Winterfell, one of the serving women told us stories, Jon went on. She used to say that there were wildlings who would lay with the others to birth half-human children. Hearth tales. Does Craster seem less than human to you? In 100 ways. He gives his sons to the wood. A long silence. Then, yes, and yes, the raven muttered, strutting. Yes, yes, yes. You knew? Smallwood told me, long ago. All the rangers know, though few will talk of it. Did my uncle know? All the rangers, Mormont repeated. I really think Benjen might have been deliberately avoiding Craster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that whole thing, that's the scariest part of this whole chapter to me, is the knowledge that the leadership of the Watch knows this, and yet somehow they don't realize that's more of a threat than.
Well, I don't think they put it together because they knew it for years, and they never put together the fact that this is actually happening, right? That it's actually working. They think he's just like leaving them out in the woods and they get taken by wild animals or something, right?
I guess that could be true. If they don't believe in the others, I guess
years ago they probably didn't believe the White Walkers were actually.
Yeah, you got to believe some of them do though. Like you said, Benjen, right?
Yeah.
Benjen may know, although Eddard seems pretty dismissive of it too, right? So it could be that their upbringing was one of the things that separated them from Starks of before, right? So it's a real question. How long has the Watch not known its purpose, right?
It's because we actually do hear the old bear say the White Walkers in the very first book, very early on, right? He says something about the White Walkers being back very early on, and you're like to Tyrion, and Tyrion's like, yeah, right, kind of thing, right? And but of course we know from the prologue that he's correct. But it seems like they didn't really take the threat seriously. It's certainly not that years ago when he was told of this.
Yeah. So it's questionable. Okay, so but clearly though in this chapter, we heard John say, "Well, we're here to kill wildlings," right? Or I don't know if it's kill wildlings, but and clearly that's what Mormon is implying here too, is that, well, he helps us against the wildlings, right? That's the value of this, right?
Well, that's what they've been thinking about him for years, and they just haven't stopped and realized, wait a minute, the true enemy is the others, and he really is giving them to the others, right? They just haven't put the two together.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
All right. With the potential for Craster having Targaryen blood, so his sons would be having Targaryen blood, which I'm assuming over time would be even higher than his content of Targaryen blood.
That'd be the same as.
Well, I mean, it's him and his daughters, so the children would actually be a higher content than the father.
If you assume his mother, the first one, right, is normal north of the wall, first men blood, right?
Right.
And if you assume that he is actually, I mean,
I've
definitely heard, and I don't mind it that he's the idea that he's Bloodraven's son, right?
Or Aemon's, but yeah.
Or who?
Mr. Aemon, right? Mr. Aemon strongly implies that he had a kid, right? He strongly implies that he had a kid.
Yeah. So either way, what you get when you have a mix like that is you get a spread. Some have none, some have super blood, right? That's how that works when you go down. And he's doing it all over the place, so it's going to be all over the map, right? Some of them will be normal, some of them would have it, right?
Okay.
They all have at least 50% of his DNA, and old dude's points, they have more than that, right? They have more than 50% of his DNA. They probably have 75%.
Depending on when George first was writing this, he didn't have dragons in it. He had the Targaryens as pyromancers, and another author told him to put dragons in. You got to have dragons. So my question is, if the Targaryen blood is that important to the White Walkers, could they have a common ancestry? The creating of the Targaryen race with the dragons, originally the Targaryens with the pyromancer abilities, and then the White Walkers with the ice version of the pyromance. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I mean, they're both kind of elf.
Opposites.
Yeah, I mean, they're both elf-like. They originally were both masters of fire and then ice. I just could they have come from the same process, just different processes?
Yeah,
reasonable.
Which would be what the Empire of the Dawn, the Gishgari, or something like that,
or the experiments of the Valerians or whatever.
Yeah, my whole King's Blood thing is that magical blood is magical blood, whether it presents as the ability to do glamour, whether it presents as the ability to warg or skin change, whether it presents the ability to do pyromancy, or in this case, I forget what you call ice mancy, but
and is that different from water magic? That's another question, right?
Telekinesis or whatever, right? I mean, I think it's all in that gene that we're talking about. That's 1 in 1,000 people have it, and 1 in a million people have it doubly, like Bran, right?
Right.
I don't think it has to be presented as skin changing specifically. I think it can be all that stuff, right? So certainly, if you extend that out to the others and their magic, that could be part of the same route, right?
Yeah.
So Guy is arguing that they do not really have different abilities, that you have the ability to use the magic or you don't, right? So Lizzie's asking, do they have different lines of blood carry different abilities? And I don't know, maybe not.
I think the ability to ride a dragon is specific. That's Valyrian, right? Other than the specific Valyrian dragon riding capability, which I'm going to separate from anything else. Other than that, I would answer no. That's all the same.
Skin changing, regardless.
Is it, or is the whole point of Lyanna that in fact it's not different, right? I mean, maybe the whole point of Lyanna is that Rhaegar came to the conclusion that actually that the ability to ride a horse superhumanly indicates that you actually have the very magic genes that I'm looking for, and that it's not different.
I
or
think,
your argument would be maybe Rhaegar thought that he needed to combine two different.
well, I think he wanted somebody to hatch a dragon, and then she's a special female. So I think, remember, go back to what George stands for. George is one of the original trying to be a feminist males back in the 70s, right? He is big about female power and the power of women, right? And so Lyanna is both a woman in the sense that she can she's going to give birth to Jon, right? But she's also totally empowered and totally magical and a badass, right? So that's George's like favorite archetype of a female character. Arya's that archetype.
Well, one thing he does better than most is that he actually has people like Arya and Sansa actually growing, right? That they're too often in that archetype is like somebody who's like naturally starts off gifted, and then they're just super competent, and then there's some male who's incompetent that grows to become competent. Is sort of the way most people write that, and George actually has growth in his female characters. What a concept.
Now,
anyway,
on Lizzie's question about the bloodlines. Well, you got the people of the Renor or whatever it is, or what'd you say?
George understands that on the inside, women have members even bigger than Tormund's. Har!
Thank you, Lizzie. But on the bloodlines, I mean, you do get different results. So you got the people of the Renor with their I can't pronounce that damn word. I got half a mouth. With their water magic, and then you got people like Howland Reed that can breathe mud, walk on leaves, change earth to water, water to earth with a whisper, talk to trees, can make castles appear and disappear. I mean, he's a pretty magical guy before he even went to the Owl Faces. So we don't know what that did after that point. But it just seems that like neck magic is kind of neck magic, because he said they were told that he learned all the magic of their people. I don't know. It does seem to me that certain bloodlines do tend to lead toward certain abilities, if that makes sense.
Maybe Lizzie says maybe it's regional, sort of. Yeah, well, or maybe the knowledge is regional. So maybe you just have the talent and the knowledge of how to use it.
In my first King's Blood video, that's the argument I make, right? That it's about your experience and the things. So Bran had experience in a Godswood with a Weirwood, right? And he had experience with a direwolf being bonded to him at a young age. So that's why he's able to become a true green seer in the sense of the northern green seer, right? Well, Melisandre did not have that. She was brought up in the religion of R'hllor, so she did pyromancy because that's what she was taught, right? Similar, whatever Sansa's doing. Lyanna, she rides horses because she didn't have a direwolf, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not so much that it's regional, so much as it's what your experience brings you to.
Right.
Make this.
Well, that's why I said the knowledge is regional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that. The lore lessons for each place are different. As Bran thinks, every place has their heroes, sort of deal, but for magic. Yep.
Yeah.
The wide world is full of people wanting help, Jon. Would that some could find the courage to help themselves. Craster sprawls in his loft even now, stinking of wine and lost to sense. On his board below lies a sharp new axe. Were it me, I'd name it Answered Prayer and make an end. Yes, Jon thought of Gilly, she and her sisters. They were 19 and Craster was 1. But it would be an ill day for us if Craster died. Your uncle could tell you of the times Craster's keep made the difference between life and death for our rangers. My father, he hesitated. Go on, Jon, say what you would say. My father once told me that some men are not worth having, Jon finished. A bannerman who is brutal or unjust dishonors his liege lord as well as himself. Craster is his own man. He has sworn us no vows, nor is he subject to our laws. Your heart is noble, Jon, but learn a lesson here. We cannot set the world to rights. That is not our purpose. The Night's Watch has other wars to fight. Other wars, yes, I must remember. Just because you cannot fix the whole world doesn't mean you can't address the harm that's right there in front of you. I'm not sure if I like this lesson. Mance Rayder means to strike south into the Seven Kingdoms. Wildlings have invaded the realm before. Jon had heard the tales from Old Man and Maester Lewin both back at Winterfell. Raymond Redbeard led them south in the time of my grandfather's grandfather. Before him, there was a king named Bale the Bard. Aye, and long before them came the Horn Lord and the brother kings Gendel and Gorn. And in ancient days, Jorman, who blew the horn of winter and woke giants from the earth. Woke giants from the earth. Each man of them broke his strength on the wall, or was broken by the power of Winterfell on the far side. But the Night's Watch is only a shadow of what we were, and who remains to oppose the wildlings besides us? The Lord of Winterfell is dead, and his heir has marched his strength south to fight the Lannisters. The wildlings may never again have such a chance as this. I knew Mance Rayder, Jon. He's an oathbreaker, yes, but he has eyes to see, and no man has ever dared to name him faint heart. What will we do? Asked Jon. Find him, said Mormont. Fight him. Stop him. 300, thought Jon, against the fury of the wild. His fingers open and close. Mance is not your enemy.
Nope.
And up next, we get Theon 2 and more incestuous groping.
It's a pretty good chapter, even with the extra path that we had taken on certain things.
We did digress a bit.
Yeah, that's all right. That actually is probably the best part of the whole live stream.
Yeah, I think he could have actually broken that up into two. When Jon wakes up into a separate chapter, right? But for some reason, he decided to keep them together. I guess he thought it was more cohesive that way. You know, because it's a pretty long one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe he wanted the knowledge that started the chapter. He wanted you to absorb it all before he stopped. He had something to let you know and something to tell you.
It's probably better like this. I think it would be a little less satisfying. That the first half would just have been a little less satisfying, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good chapter. You see some of Jon Senior, or you see where he is at, and like Guy said, you see where he goes, the growth that Jon makes over the next several books. I mean, pretty good. You got anything you want to add, Guy?
No, I think I definitely would like to join you guys again for another one of Jon's chapters. Talking about these chapters here got me interested. So definitely the Wolf Dream chapter, and maybe the one where, like I said, where the Sword of the Morning constellation comes up. Both of those I'd be interested in. So,
well, definitely.
Is that the one where Ghost actually does make a sound, or at least Jon makes a sound?
Well, Ghost makes the sound in the chapter in the dream, right? So Jon thinks he hears Ghost, but it's in a dream, right? Which means that probably the Ghost making that sound is something he does telepathically all the time, trying to get a hold of his brothers and sisters, right?
Right.
That could be.
So obviously, being north of the wall, he's kind of blocked from them right now. I guess right now in this chapter too. So
yeah. You got anything to add there, Richard?
No, I think we're good.
All right, we ran over a little bit. It was actually probably one of my favorite live streams we've done in a while. Yeah, I appreciate it, Guy. You good for when?
I just saw your tweet, so maybe I'll jump over and see if he'll let me in.
Yeah, I'm sitting there setting up. I'm getting ready to jump on, and then I get a notice, and it's like, "Can I jump on?" And I'm like, "Sure." Works for me. Right. The more the merrier. But we got Theon Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel. Yeah, I'm glad you ran over.
Love the theory.
Jeffrey.
All right.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Which one? All of them.
All of them.
There's not too many theories out there that I don't like. I mean, even if it goes completely against what I say or think, a theory's a theory. I love the rabbit hole. I love the thought process that goes into trying to travel down the path that the theory takes you. It's the journey is the fun part.
Yeah, we've talked about this. Being for something is great. Being anti is a mess, right? You know,
Yeah.
so I like being for something, making an argument for something, and trying to understand, you know, ask questions to understand, but don't try to tear them down, you know.
No. Well, I mean, in the last one, the one I was telling you about, the real storm, I say, look, I mean, there's few hills that I'll actually die on as far as what I think. It is completely open. If John ends up being R plus L equals J, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm just going to cry a little bit and then move on. But a lot of it has to do with the last person I watched, whether I'm watching you or Kevin Pendragon or whoever else. And then the last chapter I read, the train of my brain at the point while I'm reading that chapter, and then there's that one sentence that starts a new rabbit hole that you go down, and you like the rabbit hole, but the next time you watch somebody else's video or the next chapter on that subject kind of shoots your rabbit hole and blows it completely up. I mean, it's just find another rabbit hole to go down for another theory.
Being open-minded, that's part of it, is realizing, oh, maybe I wasn't thinking about this right, and learning from it and thinking something else different. That's you know, that's one of the things that, like, we're anti exactly. We should be pro, right?
Exactly. That's what it was. I forget who it was yesterday. It was on Twitter. She's like, why is there so much negativity and individualism when it comes to the thought process on these stories? The stories are great. It doesn't really matter if you're right and the other person's wrong. It matters it's a good story. I mean, a great story. But like I said, the journey of going down, like, there's a couple things we disagree on, but it don't mean that, oh, D can't come on my show. Oh, you don't agree with me. No, it's I love your opinions. Your opinions are educated. They're researched. They're thrown out there beautifully. I mean, there's nothing to hate. Just because we don't agree on something don't mean it's not a great theory or an awesome theory.
Well, but there's this area of the fan base that is this anti Sansa is a big one, right?
Oh yeah.
There's anti Targaryens too, but
anti-Pat.
So I don't know if you guys saw this Song of Madness poll thing. I don't know if you participated in that or not. But last night, I guess in the middle of the night, somebody stacked the voting against Sansa.
Oh yeah, I saw that this morning.
Like, what in the heck? You know, because they, for some reason, you know, yeah, and I'll be the first to admit, you know, Sansa was kind of a mess in Game of Thrones, right? Until Ned died, and then she
grew.
Right, she grew, right? But there's these people that are totally against her, right? And I just don't get it. And then, of course, some of his show people, they're totally against her, like from season 6 on, because she and Dany had a beef. I didn't even really see much of a beef in the show. Even it was very small, I thought. But it was
almost more between Sansa and Arya.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't blame the character. I don't blame the actress. I think that's the route that the showrunners and the producers are saying. You need to act this way and look this way.
It wasn't even that big a part of Ski's point. It's not even that big a part of the show.
No, I mean, such a small little bit, and she gets all this hate from it, and I just don't get it.
The producer told her to walk around with stink face on, and then everybody hated it.
Be for something, you know. Again,
so, the good outweighs the bad without a doubt.
Yeah, I agree, Lizzie.
Definitely.
Their hands, that's fine. The North remembers.
Well, actually, that's my last comment there. North remembers. This is the San Rixian T-shirt. So
yeah, well, my 8-year-old is at the house, so you get a superhero T-shirt today.
There you go.
But all right, Wednesday, Theon 2, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks again, Guy. Anytime you want to jump on, you're more than welcome. We love you. Richard, thanks again. You always bring in the I always say you're the brains of the operation, because if it was just me doing this, you get about 5 minutes and not a lot of fluff.
If you go back to before the chapter 6 of Game of Thrones, you did do one for each of the chapters before that without me.
Yeah. But I like them better.
What it's like if they want.
I'm certainly not disagreeing. Richard brings brains for sure, but he also brings a level of organization that makes it work, right? So,
yeah, I'm scatterbrained. Everybody knows it. I mean, Richard is my encyclopedia. So without a doubt, I call him the brains every episode. I mean it with all my heart. So he makes the live streams what they are, and I appreciate it. But
thank you, sir.
That's it. Hour and 14 minutes is almost a record for us. So we will, Gee, thanks again for jumping on. Everybody else, we will see y'all Wednesday. Thanks again, Richard. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.